A year had passed since my separation from Emily, and my life had taken an entirely unforeseen direction. I had moved into a modest condominium downtown, a significant distance from the house that had once echoed with the remnants of our shared existence. My days were now calmer, filled with work, reading, and the occasional social encounter. It was a simple life, devoid of any pretense of grandeur. Yet it provided the tranquility I had so desperately craved after the tempest of our separation. Since the final court proceedings, Emily and I had maintained a strict silence, neither of us reaching out. The wounds from our separation were still raw, and I convinced myself that this distance was for the best. I doubted my ability to confront her without the resurgence of anger and resentment. Then, one cold November evening, as I was settling in for a peaceful evening, a knock sounded at my door. I was not expecting any visitors, so I was utterly surprised when I opened the door to find Emily standing there. She appeared hesitant, her posture uncertain, and her eyes conveyed a mixture of determination and apprehension. "James," she began softly, her voice trembling slightly. "Emily, what are you doing here?" I finally managed to ask, my mind racing with confusion and guarded curiosity. "I know this is unexpected," she began, wringing her hands nervously, "but I need to speak with you. It's important." A flurry of questions filled my mind. Was she here to revisit the past, to stir up old wounds, or had something serious occurred? Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and motioned for her to enter. She entered cautiously, taking a seat at the very edge of my sofa, her posture rigid. I sat opposite her, maintaining a distance. Whatever she was about to say, I wasn't sure I was prepared to hear it. "It's about my father," she said at last, her voice barely audible. "Your father?" I repeated, frowning. Richard, her father, had always been a thorn in the side of our relationship. From the moment we met, he had made it abundantly clear that he did not consider me suitable for his daughter. His persistent interference had ignited countless arguments and tension between Emily and me, widening the rift in our marriage. "He's very ill," she continued, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "The doctors say he doesn't have much time left, and he's been asking to see you." "To see me? Why would he want to see me?" I asked incredulously. She hesitated, taking a deep breath before speaking. "He wants to apologize, James. He feels responsible for what happened between us." Her words struck me like a blow to the gut. Richard, the man who had done everything in his power to undermine me, now sought to make amends. I wasn't sure how to react. A part of me wanted to laugh at the irony, while another part seethed with anger. "I don't know, Emily," I said after a long pause. "This feels complicated. I know it's a lot to ask," she said quickly, her voice pleading, "but it would mean so much to him and to me." I scrutinized her face, searching for any hidden agenda or ulterior motive. All I saw was sincerity and vulnerability. Despite everything that had transpired, despite the hurt and betrayal, a small part of me still cared about her. Witnessing her earnestness and desperation stirred something within me. After what felt like an eternity, I nodded slowly. "All right," I said. "I'll do it." 2 days later, I found myself standing outside Richard's hospital room, bracing myself for the unexpected conversation that lay ahead. My heart pounded as Emily remained beside me, her expression unreadable, her usual composure betraying nothing of her inner feelings. After a brief, almost imperceptible gesture from her, I reached out and pushed open the door. Inside the room, Richard sat in a chair, looking frail and diminished, a shadow of the imposing figure I had once known. His skin was pale, his frame thinner than I remembered. Yet when he saw me, his face illuminated with a weak but genuine smile. Despite the obvious effort it took to remain alert, his eyes sparkled with emotion. "James," he said, his voice hoarse but steady, conveying a sense of genuineness that took me by surprise. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, unsure how to respond. A tangle of emotions swirled within me. For a long time, I had harbored resentment towards this man, blaming him for much of the strain in my marriage. Now here he was, vulnerable and seeking something I hadn't expected: closure. He took a shallow breath before continuing. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about the past," he said, his gaze fixed on me. "And I realize now the extent to which I disrupted things for you and Emily. I thought I was protecting her, but all I did was hurt both of you." His words hit me like a wave, bringing an unexpected ache to my chest. Hearing Richard acknowledge his role in the pain that had, in so many ways, shaped my life, was more than I had expected. What we had endured was both astonishing and strangely comforting. My throat tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. Finally, I managed to say, "I appreciate you saying that, but it wasn't entirely your fault. Emily and I made our own mistakes." A weak smile tugged at the corners of Richard's mouth, and his eyes softened. "Perhaps so," he murmured, "but I hope you can forgive an elderly man for his part in it." I swallowed hard, feeling a blend of emotions: relief, pity, and a strange sense of release. "I forgive you," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. That conversation marked a turning point. After a period of bitterness and distance, it opened a path for Emily and me to reconnect, not as a couple, but as allies in a shared effort to support her father in his final days. We didn't rehash old arguments or dwell on past grievances. Instead, we focused on the present, on how we could be there for Richard and for each other during such a challenging time. Richard passed away a few weeks later. At his funeral, Emily and I stood side by side, united not by love but by a quiet mutual respect. In the days that followed, we found ourselves conversing, not about what had gone wrong between us, but about the memories we had shared, the lessons we had learned, and the individuals we had become. We didn't reunite. That chapter of our lives had closed. But for the first time in years, I could look at Emily without feeling anger or resentment. Instead, there was a sense of harmony, an acknowledgement of the good times we had shared and the growth that had emerged from our struggles. Months later, an unexpected letter arrived in the mail. It was from Richard's lawyer, informing me that he had left me a small inheritance. Along with the money was a handwritten note: "James, thank you for forgiving me. Use this to begin something new. You deserve it. Richard." As I read the note, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. Richard's words were simple yet profound, a final act of affirmation and generosity. That night, when Emily knocked on my door, I never envisioned it would lead to this. Not a revival of romance, but a path toward healing and understanding. Life has a way of surprising you, and I've discovered that forgiveness is one of the most significant gifts you can offer, not only to others but to yourself.